Let's take a minute and thank our sponsors for helping grow this podcast to bigger and better every episode. Our first one is SR3 ResQ Concepts, because you don't know what you don't know. Our next one is Life Saving Systems Corporation. We do our work so you can do yours. Tough gear for tough jobs. Breeze Eastern, the world's only dedicated helicopter hoist and winch provider. And Flippin' Coffee, brewing real coffee with real ingredients for real coffee drinkers. SR3 ResQ Concepts is a training company that can help with your helicopter training, standardization, and safety checks. Or maybe just an annual FAA refresher is what you need. They're ready to help your agency keep up to date with current techniques, rules, regulations, and equipment. The training staff is amazing, with certified flight instructor pilots and experienced crew members that are offering training in rescue, medical, tactical, firefighting, and ground operations. SR3 has partnered with Petzl to assist with a personal protective equipment inspection course and the highly specific Lizard, which is used for helicopter cliff and mountain rescue. And to add into it, they also teach ground, tactical, emergency care. Contact them today at sr3rescueconcepts.com. Again, sr3rescueconcepts.com, or follow them on Instagram at sr3_rescue. That's sr3_rescue. Then we have Life Saving Systems Corporation. Manufactures the world's toughest helicopter rescue gear. From their Triton harness, which is my favorite harness being a rescueman, to the rescue basket, litters, and of course the most popular hoist hook in helicopters, yes, the D-Lock. The team at LSC cuts, bends, sews, welds, and machines these products into existence every day and sends them on their way to us. We do our work so that you can do yours. LSC, tough gear for tough jobs. Check them out at lifesavingsystems.com. That's lifesavingsystems.com. And follow them over on Instagram at ResQGear. That's at ResQ Gear. Next is Breeze Eastern. Since the very first helicopter rescue in November 1945, Breeze Eastern has designed and manufactured superior rescue hoist solutions. While much of the technology and unique mission requirements has changed over the past 75 years, their commitment to the rescuers, operators, and those rescued has not. Contact Breeze Eastern today by visiting them at breeze-eastern.com. That's breeze-eastern.com. And the last one is Flippin' Coffee. At Flippin' Coffee, we roast each batch to perfection to bring that smooth, delicious cup of coffee that you won't find in most other brands. We like to keep it simple, brewing real coffee using real ingredients for real coffee drinkers. Contact them today at flippincoffee.com. That's FLIPPIN coffee.com. You can also follow them on Instagram at Flippin' Coffee. That's at FLIPPIN coffee. As a bonus, Flippin' Coffee is given a promotion. If you punch in promotion code, all capitals, REAL ResQ, you get 10% off. That's promo code Real ResQ, capitals, all capitals, REAL ResQ, and you get 10%. If you're just going to send everybody an email, just make sure you tell them one thing. Quinny sent me here. And thank you to all of our sponsors. My next guest is the first time I've been able to bring a United States Coast Guard hoist operator to the show. And I could not be more happy to have this guy come on, because this guy is where I learned all of my stuff. So he was my instructor as a hoist operator. Super happy to have him here. He's got incredible stories with some great tips at the end of the podcast. So without further ado, please welcome Mr. Pat Barber. My name is Jason Quinn. I am United States Coast Guard Rescue Swimmer number 500. These are my rescues and rescues from those of us that put our lives on the line every day so others may live. This is the Real ResQ Podcast. Let's do this.
You got the con.
I have the con. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Real ResQ podcast. My guest today is more than just a friend of mine. Him and I have been through Kodiak together. We were down in the Gulf of Mexico together. And dare I say it, he is my original hoist operator instructor is what I should say, because everything I learned from this guy. And when I thought I knew everything, he'd be like, hey, we're going to do this. And I'd be like, but that's not possible. He's like, yes, it is. You just need to figure it out. And next thing I know, I'm putting him in out. I'm like, what? And I'm figuring stuff out. And I can't thank the man enough. So welcome to the Real ResQ podcast, Mr. Pat Barber. How are you, buddy?
I'm well. Thanks for that intro.
Absolutely.
It is great to be here. It's great to see your sunny, smiley face. I miss you, buddy.
Oh, you too, man. You too. I miss you a lot. So.
Yeah, and hopefully things worked out. We get together here a little bit.
Oh, fingers crossed, man. I'm kind of jonesing on that training. So
yeah. I don't know if we can talk about that or kind of stuff.
We won't talk. We'll just leave it at that. I hope I get to see you too, buddy.
Yeah.
So yeah. And I really, I mean, there are a couple of phone calls that I've made back to you, text messages and whatnot. That everything you taught me in the hoist operating world, and you were not the only guy. So I got to give a little credit to, Joe Martin, Dan Cassetti, Rich Forbes. A lot of those guys gave me some great information, and even guys that are outside of that realm. But you gave me that core of everything. And I remember at one point sending an email out or a message out to a bunch of people. I'm like, hey, I'm running into trouble with this. And the response back was like, well, maybe you're doing it wrong, or there wasn't a response back. And I realized at that moment in time, I'm beyond everybody else because of Pat's training. Boom.
So, well, good. All I can say is thank you.
You're welcome.
And it's a pleasure. And I take great pride in people that I teach or have taught, and I have a lot of pride in you. So I am proud of you, buddy.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. I still think of one other thing that you tell me, or you used to tell me, and that is when you hear yourself in the person you're training, you've done a good job. And that's like when I hear the guys that I'm training and it sounds like Pat Barber, I'm like, oh, I'm doing it right. He'd be happy.
Yeah.
Oh, it's funny. So anyway, with all that, Pat, if you could please just introduce yourself to everybody out there, who you are, where you're from, how you got into search and rescue.
Okay. Well, obviously you told them who I am. So Pat Barber. I'm currently living in Trout Creek, Montana, beautiful Northwest Montana. Love it up here. Very small community, very small. That's what I like. And that's why I moved here. So how I got into search and rescue, obviously through the Coast Guard, but what kind of started it is I watched this cheesy Coast Guard recruiting commercial. It was on TV or something. And I think it was at H-52 out of like Sitka, and it was landing on the beach and coming to the aid of some guy who got mauled by a bear. And I'm like, that is what I want to do. I mean, it was so that was kind of like the whole start of it. I'm like, that's what I want to do. I had some mechanical background. I was a heavy equipment mechanic beforehand and just looking for something else. So I joined the Coast Guard with the desire to be in helicopters in Alaska. So
nice.
It all worked out well. My first tour was Kodiak on H3s back in the day.
We won't give away an age.
Yeah, it was a while. It was a while. So that started it all right there. So I did a full 20-year career. We might touch on all that kind of as we go on. I got retired, tried to get into law enforcement, and that just didn't work out because of the economy, and we're getting out of the Coast Guard at the wrong time. So I got hooked up with a private helicopter company that does training, and that's where you and I worked together. So I worked with them for quite a while. We did the Gulf of Mexico SAR EMS, which that was fun. There was we did a lot of stuff.
We did a lot of stuff down there. We had a good time down there.
Oh, it was just phenomenal. Every day, you know, we were on duty for 2 weeks straight.
Yeah.
Missions after missions. And I think I actually hoisted more. So I did the Gulf thing for 5 years, I think it was.
Yeah. Give or take. Yeah.
I hoisted more in that like legitimately hoisted people for missions, and more in that 5 years than my whole 20 years in the Coast Guard. I mean, it was the rodeo days.
Yeah.
And then I just got more involved in their training and kind of like did just specifically training with them, and trained a lot of agencies, and that was fun. I enjoy the training, you know, because I think safety is my key. You know, I want to make sure people get home at the end of the day, they get home to the people they love, and it's a dangerous business. So I really enjoyed that. And then now I'm working a little bit with another company doing some training as well. I'm excited about that, so I can continue that on. Some other stuff. So obviously I'm not working full time, so I have another part-time job. I am a deputy coroner for the county here.
Wow. Oh, nice.
That's an interesting work, you know, and it kind of just goes right along with what we've been doing, other than I'm, you know, obviously dealing with people who have died.
Yeah.
But I'm also dealing with the surviving family members.
Oh, that's got to be a little interesting.
It is interesting, but I see that I'm a good help with that, you know, because we did SAR because we want to help people, and now I'm still helping people, but just in a different aspect. It's an interesting job, very interesting, has a lot of variety. So it's pretty cool. We could talk about that more if you wanted, but it's all good. It's all good. So that's what I'm doing right now.
Nice.
That's a quick down and dirty.
And you know what? You actually do one more thing, which I find very cool, and that is you're a woodworker as well, and an arborist at that. So you do a little bit.
Yeah.
You dabble in quite a bit. So it's not like you got out of heights, because you still hang from trees to cut limbs and tops of trees down, and then you're taking fresh wood and making tables and cutting boards and.
Yeah, I do all things wood. So and lessons learned, when we get to there, like later on, I actually learned I had a kind of a mishap with the tree just last week, and I learned something out of that, and we're going to talk about that later. But
I'm so excited, man! This is great.
Big lesson there. But yeah, I do woodworking. You can check out my wood. Can I plug my?
Absolutely.
PB Woodworking on Facebook.
PB Woodworking on Facebook, man. I think I've liked it. If I haven't, I'm going to go right after this and make sure I like that page. But
so I sell some of my cutting boards and things off of there, and that's good. My long-term goal, once I'm done with every other thing, I'll just have a wood shop, and I'll be the old guy working in his wood shop, sipping coffee. That's plan, but
that's a good plan. We could bring in Bob Watson and say, planning is essential, plans are meaningless.
Yeah. I quote that often.
Thank you, Bob Watson.
Has he been on here?
Not yet.
Oh my goodness.
He's on my list. I gotta.
That would be like a 4 or 5-parter podcast.
Yeah. One day for sure.
One day, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. So now I'd like to get into just a little bit of you said your first unit was Kodiak. So when you got up there, you get qualified, you're finally, actually, if you don't mind, go into a little bit more as to what the hoist operators have to do in order to get qualified. Cause it's not like, and this is out of my wheelhouse. So this is all you, but you guys graduate from an A school and now you're trained mechanically, and you're doing either right now it's AMT or AET, which is the mechanics mate, like aviation mechanic, and then aviation electronics is AET. But then you guys, after you get qualified, you have to do a post-flight, learn the helicopters, learn how to do engine washes and your basic aircrew stuff. Then you go on to be a hoist operator. So if you can kind of touch on a little bit of that to give people an idea.
Yeah, that's the progress. So once you complete all that stuff and the ground stuff and get your post flight letters and learn how to inspect the aircraft like they want you to, then you enter the flight syllabus, which is a, it's a paper copy, and it's all through progressions, and it basically starts you from the very beginning of how to do the hoist check and inspection, look at that kind of stuff. And then you move into basic hoisting, like what they call land hoisting. So you're hoisting over the tarmac, over the runway, putting a trail line down, tag line down, bringing it back up. It's the old, what was that, crawl, walk, run process.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So you go for that, and it's a good way to do it. You're at the problem. A problem with it is you're at the mercy of flight availabilities. Missions and operations take precedence above the new guy training. So sometimes that can take a long time, and sometimes it goes pretty quick. So my initial hoist training went pretty quick. I think within 3 months, I think I got it all done.
Wow, that's really good.
I think it was pretty quick. So you do the land hoisting, and you get proficient at that. You learn the EPs, emergency procedures, and cable management, that kind of stuff. And then you go to over the water hoisting, and then to a boat, and then you progress onto that. And then you do swimmer deployments. And then you kind of like start everything all over again, but then start doing it at night, because that's a whole different world. And, you got to have your skills a little bit better. So then you finish the night stuff. A funny story during one of my trainings. So we're practicing deploying pumps. You got the indirect pump deployment and the direct pump deployment. In the indirect deployment, you just put the tagline on the vessel, the helicopter comes back and left, you hook the line to the pump, and you just basically push the pump out the door.
Yep. Well,
back in the day, we had the pumps weren't in those plastic clamshell containers. They were in basically a short 55-gallon drum, a 35-gallon drum that had a lid on the top. It had this big crappy thing that closed the lid. And so those, where this is, maybe. So those were the pumps. And we wore, for our flotations, what was it, ESAS? Was that it was the bladder that you inflated the flotation, and then for breathing, you had this like corrugated hose.
Yeah, because it was an oxygen. When you pulled the tab, it was oxygen that inflated the vest, so you could breathe and get out.
Yeah, you would breathe out of the vest.
Right.
It was a terrible thing, other than it.
Yeah.
You had all this pressure. It was not regulated. It was like whatever pressure's in the vest.
Yeah.
So anyway,
floating at the top of the helicopter, or at the floor with it upside down. Yeah, the design was it was like, oh, this is a great idea, with just a terrible, all bad. No, I'm glad to get away from that.
So I'm wearing one of those vests.
Okay.
Get the trail line on the vessel. We back off. I push the pump out. Well, during that process, that little handle latch thing got caught on the toggle on my inflation of the vest. So I pushed the pump out, and my vest inflated, and you can't hear it or anything, but all of a sudden my chest is like super tight, and I'm like, trying to figure out what's going on. Well, I inflated my vest without knowing it. And everybody got a good laugh out of it. So that was during one of my trainings.
Oh, that's fantastic. All right. So now that you've made it through all of that process, you are now qualified, standing duty, and your first SAR case. What do you got?
So I'm going to actually skip to my second SAR case, because my first one was, it was a medevac, so we flew out to a remote village and picked up a young little kid that was hurt. So it was kind of like, there wasn't a whole lot. Unremarkable, we could say.
Yeah. But all right. No, wait. I want to talk on this, because that's something that you really remember. Your very first SAR case. So you fly out, you land, you have a swimmer on board?
We have a swimmer, and I think we took a corpsman too.
Oh, nice. So easy. You land, they depart the aircraft, they go get the patient, they come back. It's pretty uneventful. Yeah.
Yeah. Other than I remember we had to deal with some weather, which that was new to me, because when you do the training, you're always flying in these perfect training mints.
Yeah.
So then the real deal, the real thing, we fly out, and Kodiak, how the weather is, and fog, and ceilings down to the ground. So that was one of the main things I do remember, is we had to deal with weather, which was totally new. So so we had to kind of like avoid and get down low and fly underneath all that stuff, and got to the village, which was important. Obviously, the kid needed higher level of care, and took her back, met the ambulance at the air station, and
pretty non-event. Good little
so
easy case.
That was my first
nice
launch out.
All right. Hey, listen, everybody's got to have their first, and some are easy and some are hard, but that's a good way to get your feet wet. All right. So number 2, go ahead, hit me.
So this was the second case. I consider it a significant event in my career. I've never even told you this. And it was not,
which is exciting for me, by the way.
I mean, I didn't hoist anybody, but so this was the deal. We get launched out to a vessel in the Barren Islands. If you remember those, that's east of Kodiak, kind of in the lower part of between Kodiak and Homer, kind of like down in that, basically in the middle, but still in the Gulf, just kind of a group of islands. Kind of nasty weather there because you got So the vessel taking on water. So we fly out there. It's like there I was, dark and stormy. It was,
the way the stories are written.
Yeah. It was dark and stormy, like 1 o'clock in the morning, we get launched. We fly out there. The vessel was taking on water, had lost all electronics. They were only talking to us on a handheld radio.
Oh, wow.
There's two people on board, and they were just transiting the vessel. They weren't fishing, so there wasn't a crew, and all the rigging and stuff was in, but they were just transiting. So we get on scene and talk to them, and of course they don't want to get off. Nobody wants to get off their boat until they're chest deep in water.
Yeah.
But so the plan was just to deliver them 2 pumps, because we'd taken 2 pumps. The H3, you could take 2 pumps, 8 or 10 box lunches, and
and not worry about fuel or weight. Beautiful.
Yeah. So we get on scene there, not a light on the boat. It is dark and stormy. I'm not going to try to remember what the winds were, but it was howling. The seas were like legit Alaska weather.
Yeah.
So I slide open the door and stick my, to look out, and I'm shocked. It's just like I'm in a hurricane. The snow and rain. I mean, this was in October, November-ish, right in there. It's snowing, raining. Everything's blowing sideways. It's terrible out there. And I wish, again, you do all your training when it's nice and sunny and stuff, and you don't get exposed to that kind of stuff until you're like literally thrown into it. So talking to them on the radio, they're confident the boat's not going to sink, but they need to get the water off. So they just want the pumps. So we're going to do a direct delivery to the pumps. So get all rigged up, do the rescue checklist, blah, blah, blah. Lower out the initial tagline. And it's like putting a rope in the river.
Holy cow.
Because the tail line just, just blows backwards. So I haul it all back. We add a ton more of weight to the weight bag. The H3, we did carry a whole bunch of weight. And then we even had this heavy weather kit, which was another bag of weights. And when you have that much space and you can haul that much, it's great to have all that extra.
Yeah, the 65 doesn't have that. So
no,
it was only allowed to have like 3 weight bags in the back of that aircraft.
You gotta get rid of the co-pilot, So there was even talk of putting the chocks on into the trail line because it was so bad. And oh no, actually that comes up later. Okay, so I add some more weight on there, get it on there, get the bags, get the trail line on the deck. And I mean, it is howling and the boat is pitching, and the boat hits a big swell and pretty much just stops, and of course we zoom on past forward, and the trail line gets wrapped up in the rigging, immediately parts, snap. So then
holy cow,
I'm like, had this like moment where I'm like, I got to get my stuff together. I'm way over my head. And in order for me to be able to pull this off, I got to come up with something. It's got to be, this is it. This is the real deal. I have found myself way above my head. Excuse me. So it was just shocking to me. But I'm like, okay, we're going to do it again. So we rig up again. And this is where I think the idea of the chocks come in, because we just lost 4 or 5 weight bags or whatever. So I don't know whether we used the chocks or not. I do remember talking about that.
Yeah.
So we get it all rigged up again, get it on there, get the trail line on the deck, deliver the first pump. Everything's all cool. And deliver the second pump. I think we gave them 2 pumps because it was a pretty big boat, 60 to 80 foot.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Good size for sure.
And they had propulsion. They could motor, but they had 0 light. There wasn't a light on deck. There wasn't even a flashlight,
Wow.
So the only thing you could see was whenever the flood hover lights would illuminate there. So get both pumps on, and that just wore me out. It was like, but finally figured it out, the process, got it all done. They got the pumps running. So we babysitted them for a while. They had a hard time navigating as well. So we came up with the idea of we would fly ahead of them to where they needed to go and drop those big floats that were like a little trash can, the smoke flare floats.
Oh yeah. Like the Mark 58s and the Mark 25s. You're talking about
big,
those? Yeah. So the Mark 58 is a big white phosphorus type material. It burns for 58 minutes. Hence the 58, 60, but yeah, beautiful. Yeah. Okay.
So we'd throw one of those ahead of them. They would motor towards it. And then we'd put another one ahead of them and they would motor towards it. And of course, and then we ran out of flares.
Of course we did.
But as we're circling around them, I kind of noticed that the moon is directly behind them. So I tell the pilot, hey, just tell them to keep the moon like right at their 6 o'clock and they'll keep motoring. So that worked. So they kept on motoring.
Nice.
The way they needed to go. And then we bingoed fuel and had to leave them. I think we went to Cordova to get refuel. And then a small boat from somewhere came out and escorted them in. But the big deal was when I got back, I realized like I need to do something to improve myself, something, because this is no joke. I was so shocked by the weather, the conditions, the difficulty. I figured out, I got to do something. So I started, from that point on, I started hoisting in my head every day, several times a day.
Nice.
I would have a whole entire hoist procedure. I would make up the scenario and I would just go through the entire thing, verbalizing it in my head. And I would throw in emergency procedures or whatever. And I did that. I did that up until just years ago. Actually, I still hoist in my head. And I think that helped me, because if you can get the rhythm and the cadence, and if you don't have to think about what you got to say, if you don't have to think about what to anticipate, if you don't have to think, that takes a whole load off of you. And then you can focus on watching the swells and try to time the hoist and that kind of stuff. So I credit that case, as a huge eye opener. It was just like, man, I'm not prepared for this, but it's important enough that I learned how to prepare for it. So the only thing I could do was that. So that was my second case, and that was significant to me. Yeah.
That's pretty gnarly. That's awesome. Holy cow. Now it makes a lot more sense to me, by the way, as to all the training that you put me through. It's all coming together now.
Well, it's serious business. I keep saying it's serious business. People rely on you. The crew relies on you. The aircraft crew, the helicopter crew relies on you to get the job done. They put you in that position. Gosh darn it, you better perform.
Right.
And then of course, the customer the taxpayer, whoever you're dealing with, even though if you're just giving them pumps to dewater their boat so they can make it home.
Yeah, that's your job. And
yeah.
Oh my gosh. Ooh. So now you've had actually a couple other kind of significant cases in that, you know, like you and I have shared a couple, which I am definitely going to talk about, maybe two of them off the top of my head.
Good. Let's talk about
it. No, hey, give me one or two more that you did in the Coast Guard that kind of stand out to you.
Okay. So I did the transition from H3 to H60 when I was in Kodiak, and then I had some medical issues with my wife, and I left, and I did recruiting for a year.
Nice.
That's all I'm going to say about that. I got out of that and went to Humboldt Bay and got qualified in the H65.
Yep.
And for the rest of my career was pretty much in 65s. I think when I retired, I had 4,400 hours in the 65. So I did a lot in the 65.
That's a lot of flying.
Yeah, you know, and everybody bashes that aircraft, but it's good at what it does. You know, it doesn't have the legs like the Big Iron or anything like that. But we definitely got two cases out of the 65 that were interesting. So one, it was a weekend duty day, and you know, we go do the LE boondoggle, and we're flying around, and we're north of where are we at? North, almost up to Oregon, up close to Crescent City, that kind of.
Yep.
And we're about maybe a mile offshore, just zooming north, and I could see something on the beach. It's kind of a sandy beach. I could see something on there, and we're like, "Hey, so we flew over and check it out." And it's a sailboat blowing up on the beach. So we're just kind of touring around it, and we hadn't had any. You know how you do the morning brief, and they tell you about boats adrift or things like that. Well, that wasn't in the morning brief or. So we're hovering around it, and we noticed that there's no footprints around the boat. You would think that there would be. So I think the pilot came up with the idea, like, hey, let's just turn around and fly into the wind. So we did. We turned around, flew into the wind, and maybe, it's hard to say, a mile or so, we find two guys bobbing in the water.
No way.
Like, there's people, there's two guys. And so the swimmer is in his regular flight gear, so he quickly puts on his dry suit. You know that routine.
Oh, yeah. We talk about that in one of my other episodes with Steve Hathaway, and that was one of the things that he made all the swimmers do in order to finish that qualification. You get changed in the back of the aircraft, and me as a 6'4" dude in the back of a 65 to go from a flight suit to a dry suit is not an easy feat.
Exactly. It's like, well, so I'm watching the swimmer change. It's like he's trying to change his clothes in a glove box. It's
totally.
Anyway, this guy, and he was not a small person. Can we throw names out here? Like who it was?
Absolutely, please do.
Dan Adelsberg.
Okay.
Yeah. So big guy, he's a full-size guy. So we get him all set up, and we're just going to do a regular direct deployment. And so the first person goes down, he grabs them, throws a strap around him, hoist him back in, get him all situated, get him and the survivor in, get a blanket on the survivor. He's totally hypothermic, shivering, been in the water for I don't know how long. So we set up to do the second one, and we deploy to the second one. And when Dan gets to the second survivor, the survivor is like kicking him and thrashing him, and is just confused because of the hypothermia and scared. Doesn't know what this big orange thing is coming at him. Wow. So it turned into kind of a struggle, and I, through hand signals and head gestures, communicated with the swimmer that he wants me to drop him physically right on the person. And so we do that. He bear hugs him, leg locks him, does everything, submits him, basically, gets him all in. So, I mean, just like out of the blue, here's two guys that were our within minutes of death, floating around in the water. No radio, nobody knew they were there. They would have been, and Lord willing, we just happened to come by and find them, literally.
Wow.
Trolling for SARS. We
Well,
were.
blessing in disguise right there. Holy cow.
Yeah. And a few weeks later, I got a letter from one of the guys, and he was able to kind of look back and realize what dire straits he was. And he's like, in that moment, I didn't realize that we were knocking on death's door, and you guys just showed up and plucked us out of the sea, saved our lives. It was pretty cool. Yeah.
Oh, that is awesome, man.
Yeah. Fun stuff. Right place at the right time.
And that happens as well. So that is one of the bonuses about Coast Guard in general, is because they are on patrol quite often, and they're not always looking for people in the water and stuff. It could be, like you said, they're out on law enforcement, they're out on fishery patrols, they're out on, something else. And maybe just as the guys would call it, we're going to wave the flag today and we're going to fly up the beach. Most of the time is to wave it, people on the beach, but whatever, it's a good time. So, and then all of a sudden you come across somebody in the water and that needs your services. Man, that is incredible. That's awesome.
That was fun.
You see, you got one more with the 65.
One more with 65. So we get a call from the forest department saying they have a firefighter who's in distress, whatever. They weren't sure of his condition, but he needed medevaced out. So they give us the position, and it's literally in the Redwood State Park. It had some fires in there, so people were mopping up. Wasn't a whole lot of fires, but enough to get a couple crews in there. And there was a Forest Service Huey on scene. So we fly up there in the redwoods, redwood trees, 300, no joke, 300 some feet tall. Totally. And so our only communication at the time was with the Forest Service Huey that's on deck on there. So he's hovering and tells us, I'm hovering over the spot. You guys just pull in, take my parking spot, and they'll be right below you. So we kind of come in, see the Huey there, fly right in behind him. He takes off, and then we're kind of hovering and looking down, and all we can see is just trees. But maybe in there's some yellow shirts and stuff like that. So we finally get radio comms with the people on deck, and they said, yeah, they got a forest firefighter. There we go.
Got it. Little tongue twister there.
Smoke inhalation. He's got some respiratory problems, and give us a whole list of stuff. And like, yeah, okay, he definitely needs to come out of there.
Yep.
So as I'm looking down at the location, trees are falling away, and they're opening up this hoisting zone. It was just pretty. So.
And now, there's two questions there. Number one, was it the rotor wash, or was it because of chainsaws and they're dropping trees?
They're dropping trees.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
They're clearing the zone, the LZ, not the LZ, but the hoisting zone. They're clearing it, literally. So I'm looking down, and trees are falling. Not the big trees, but enough brush and smaller trees that they're clearing out a spot.
Oh, that's awesome.
So we're like, okay, we're gonna hoist it here. We think we're way too high, because we're staying above the treetops. So I throw up line, of course, not even close. Hook another one up, get it down. So still not close to even on deck. I got two trail lines hooked together. What was that? What were they in that day? 105 feet?
105 feet each. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So we're 210 feet, and I'm not even close to the ground. So we started descending below the treetops, which that's where things got really dicey, because once we got below the treetops, you had no vertical or horizontal fly out. You had nothing. And this is in back of the days with the 65, still had the LTS 101s, the engines that tried, but
yeah.
So
they were, let's say what it is. They were underpowered for that aircraft.
They were underpowered for that aircraft.
Yeah,
that's a fact.
And the Coast Guard has made a great change with making them better and including the transmission now, to be able to maintain the power. Because back then,
they repowered that airframe to where it should have been in the first place, but now it's significantly better.
Yeah.
So we kind of talk about this, like, should we continue down? And then this is kind of like where the risk versus gain, the information they're telling us on the ground is this guy is seriously in distress. Might not make it if we don't get him out of there,
Wow.
So then that raises the level of, okay, you're willing to take on more risks, right? So we continue to lower down. We're now way below the treetops. I mean, in a place where that aircraft should never, ever be, but we're doing it. So whatever, we're doing it. And
come on.
The co-pilot ends up opening his door so he can kind of sit sideways and see a tree there to keep clearance on the left, which I have no view of now because I'm on the right side hoisting.
Yep.
We didn't take a swimmer because we knew of weight wise. I think we took a bunch of other SAR gear out, took the raft out. We prepped the plane to get it as light as possible.
Right.
So during the whole thing, we set up this little 1, 2, 3. The co-pilot would call clear on his tree. The pilot would call clear on his tree. And then I would call clear on my tree. And we did this whole little roundabout check just to make sure we're all staying clear, because now we are way below the treetops. And then now we got a hoist. Now, how much hoist cable did we have?
The 65 had 200 feet, 190 usable feet, give or take.
Yeah, 195 usable feet. So,
yeah, I think so.
So we were basically a good 150 feet below the treetops.
Talk about squirrely, like.
Yeah, so I hook up the litter, I lower the litter down. This is one of those things, like, you generally don't want to trust anybody other than the rescue swimmer to package a patient. But here we're dealing with forest firefighter who have training and things like that. So
right.
we took another risk and let them package the patient. So get it all down there, get the litter down there. They put the guy in the litter, strap him in, and from what I can see from 150 feet above, it looks like he's properly in there. So I start bringing him in slowly. They're tending the tag line, that kind of stuff. Get him in just to the just below the landing gear.
Yeah. And
the trail line hangs up in some tree that I can't see. So now I got this like pulling thing going on, and they're still cutting trees. I forgot to mention that. The whole time they're cutting trees away, falling trees away from this whole area. So now I think that's how one of the trail line got hung up, is because they fell a tree into it.
Holy cow.
So I'm kind of like, we're stuck. So I reach and grab the old Coast Guard issue knife.
Yeah.
Reach way out there and cut the line, because it wouldn't part. You got to put a lot of pressure on there, and you don't want to so I cut the line. When I cut the line, the litter swings around, gets all, but anyway, you know how that can turn into a disaster. Finally get him inside the cabin, and then we slowly transition out of there, and then we can breathe. But yeah, that was one of those where you unfortunately got sucked into a place you don't want to be, but you think the risk is worth it because you think you're going to save somebody's life.
Yeah.
Turned out he wasn't as bad as we thought, or the information we got, but that's nonetheless, you can only go on.
Right. Pushing it to the limit, man. Yeah. Incredible. I'm going to call that a life saved. That's what I'm calling it.
Hurrah.
Hurrah. So now, actually, if you don't, I would love to touch on 2 cases that you and I had specifically. The first one, actually, both of them were with our boy Eben, which is convenient because it just so happened that the 3 of us were on duty down in the Gulf for quite a while. And the first one, we go to this jack-up rig that was, it had to have been 150 foot legs, and the guy had whatever had happened to him. But anyway, so we come over the top, and you're hoisting me in, and then with a trail line. So you drop the trail line in, which was, again, it was like forever. It was, and then the guys on deck were trusting them to get me in between all these legs. Do you remember this?
I do remember that. I remember. So let's tell your listeners what a jackup rig is.
Please do.
It's a platform that's movable, that gets towed around, and then it has legs that reach down to the Gulf floor. So these legs are adjustable. I mean, for all practical purposes. So and the legs are probably 300 feet long.
Right.
And so if he's in 100 foot of water, you got 200 feet of leg above the deck, above the, and then if he's in deep water, then the legs are all the way down.
Yeah.
So that's what this, and I remember that. And I remember it was really windy, which was kind of rare. We didn't have a whole lot of like crazy wind there, but I do remember it was windy, and we had those 100, and they were 150 feet off the deck easily.
Yeah.
And the target zone was pretty small. And
it was really small, and we couldn't do, the only thing we could do was from a hover, a straight in hoist. That was we couldn't go at an angle, and it just wasn't going to work because we needed good pilot reference. So anyway, keep going.
No, I remember that, but I remember the wind, and that was kind of the main thing that I remember about that was the challenge of the wind. And the wind causes all kinds of things. You can feel in the aircraft when it gets a gust, so you know exactly what the pilot's going to do. He's going to give a little cyclic into that gust, and that's going to move the airframe, and you got to have a pre-plan to give some cable or take some cable away when that happens. I just remember that whole deal, and that airframe that we were in, the AW139, it's got such a flat side on it. It really gets buffeted by the wind.
Yes. When you're in that hover, like a crosswind. Yeah,
it's like a barn door on the side.
Well, the other thing I remember specifically about that one too is, so we get on scene, and we had talked about a couple different ways to deploy myself and Eben to go get the patient. And the first thing was like, okay, maybe we can just deploy the tagline and throw it all the way down to the deck. And then we're looking at like, man, we're 150 feet in the air. As soon as the tagline gets halfway down, it's going to blow off the rig. So it's like, okay, that's not going to work. What if we lower me halfway down, and then I'll throw it and let those guys get it? And it was like, no. Because if it gets halfway down and they miss it, and then now I'm in the middle of the jackups with no support, and then we lose the tagline. So I think the last decision was we're going to put 2 weight bags on the end of it. And just like Coast Guard days, high line and lower that weight bag all the way down and ask those guys on deck. We gave them a great brief over the radio. I said, you just hold on to that line and nice and easy pull in. And that's what we ended up doing. And it worked out beautifully, because I remember getting on deck, and then Eben came in. Actually, did the tagline break on that? I don't remember.
Nope.
Okay, so.
But I think, is that where your vest inflated too?
Totally did. So I'm down on deck trying to pack the tagline, and I pulled my cartridge, boof, and
after we got Eben and victim on board though, right?
Yeah. So I go down. That's right. Tagline came in. I bring Eben down the gear. We set up the patient. You pick Eben and the patient up. Tagline drops, and I'm packing the tagline, and I pull that toggle, boosh, and the dude who was standing with me is just looking at me. He's like, and I'm trying to be serious, and I look up, I just start laughing. He's like, ah!
I remember looking down and seeing that. That was classic.
Oh my gosh, that was a fun case. It was fun for multiple reasons. There was a lot of dynamics that we really had to work around. We had a great pilot in the upper right-hand seat. The left pilot had nothing to look at. He was looking at nothing but gauges and keeping us at a good hover. Mark Jones, off the top of my head, was our right seat pilot.
Yeah.
So God, what a fun case. That was good. And that guy lived, no problem. Once we got out to the aircraft, stabilized him, everything was good to go. Got to the hospital, landed no problem. And then we were back to base, kicked on the TV and standing by for the next one.
I think we went got, remember how we used to go get malted milkshakes after a good case? I think we probably got malted milkshakes after that one.
We probably did. Because if we were in Galveston, we'd end up going down to like IHOP or something. And then if we're over in Fouchon, we'd head up and go get some malted milkshakes. Dude, what a good time. All right. And then the next one. The next one I want to touch on because this was super fun for me. So we are on duty. It's the Eben, Pat, and Quinny crew. And we call ourselves the Epic crew.
Epic. Yes, we were epic.
We get launched out on a disabled cruise liner. And it wasn't anything that was majorly wrong. And a lot of people actually know this story because the cruise liner was in the Gulf of Mexico and they lost an engine. Then they lost the second engine. They lost all their generators and they're just pretty much dead in the water. They were totally fine. So they were afloat. They were in tow and now they're being brought from wherever they were in the Gulf of Mexico back to Louisiana. So we get called out to go help support because now we need the cruise line asked us to bring supplies, food, water, etc., from the supply ship to the cruise line. And they had tried a whole bunch of stuff. Weather wasn't really helping. But what I remember specifically is is going out to the supply boat. So it was almost like a rock, paper, scissors. It was like, who's going to go to the supply boat and who's going to the cruise ship? Well, Eben won the cruise ship because, I'm a paramedic and making sure everybody's okay. Thanks, Eben. So, and he had, I don't know if he had a better time, but I remember Kim coming back and being like, yeah, they were bringing me drinks with umbrellas in it. I'm like, are you kidding me? So anyway, so you put me down, and this is the first time I had really used what's known as the rescue swimmer tagline deployment. And you had started to hoist me out, and I was just about maybe 10 feet off deck, but still over the water. And I was talking to the guys on the deck, and I had thrown the tagline to them, and then they helped me or helped you stabilize the load by me holding onto the tagline. They're holding onto it, and then boom, nice and easy, a little bit forward and right, and I'm on deck and I'm good to go. And then you guys took off and dropped Eben off. What I will throw out there is that you worked harder than all of us. Between you and Gene Reynolds and flying, you guys were going back and forth and you were working like a dog. I mean, because you were on the cruise ship, I'm loading baskets and bags and equipment and webbing. And I had, loads of stuff ready to go for you to be brought up to the aircraft. And sometimes it was like, hey, cases of water, food, produce. And you were hoisting all day long. I have to imagine we did, without exaggeration, 30 to 50 hoists in one day.
I wish I remembered the numbers. It was staggering how many hoists we did each day. And it was, if there was ever a record for the number of hoists, we smashed that record forever. And it will never be broken.
No,
it was astounding because we would do because we had I would hoist 6 loads off of your boat, right?
Yep.
And then we'd fly it, and then I would have to organize all that in the cabin.
Yep.
Safely, because safety never takes a day off.
Awesome.
Fly over to the cruise ship, and I would hoist those 6 loads down. And I don't remember how we got the bags back because you needed bags to refill.
I think Eben just pretty much dumped it right out. And you know what it was? You would send a basket down because we had 2 baskets with us, especially on the second day. So when one basket went down, he would dump it out. And then as the bags would go down, the crew members on the cruise ship. So this is where Eben had all his minions to help him out on it. He had like 10 people running around and helping him out. But then, and then all the bags would go back in the basket. And then when you would pull the baskets back out, boom, they come to me. So.
Yeah, there was, I think it was closer to, I think literally closer to 100 hoists easily. Because you consider hoisting off the supply vessel and hoisting onto they added up. I mean, we were keeping track, but then we totally just lost keeping track because there's so many.
There were so many. You know what? You're right. There were easily over 100 because there was six just coming off my supply boat, and there was 6 going on minimum to the cruise ship. There's 12 plus the recovery of stuff and the insertion of stuff on my end. So you're talking 20 hoists per leg, and we did it all day. You guys left to go back to refuel and then come back.
Yeah, we did it all day. It was, and hoisting to the vessel was, hoisting to the vessel you were on was actually harder because that was a smaller vessel and it had some waves and, but a nice big platform in the back to hoist to. So everything was well. You guys did a great job. And we just
I had a bunch of good crew members with me too. All those guys, hats off to them because they were like, "What are we doing?" And I'm like, "This is what we're gonna do." So they took great instruction and really gave me a good hand packaging stuff up. And
yeah, that was well. And then hoisting to the cruise ship, due to the winds, we kind of had to hoist to a side walkway. There was kind of more of an open, obvious place to hoist to, but due to the winds and the way the vessel was getting towed and things, but still but there was a lot of cool, interesting things that happened during the hoist. We would, as you fly up to the vessel, I think the back of the cruise ship is like little staterooms.
Yep.
And there were people there with signs, like, "We'll pay you whatever to take us off." and girls with, like wanting us to pick them up. And because there's a lot of people on there, and they were stars for entertainment, and we were the entertainment for the day. So it was interesting every time we came over. I mean, they kept all the people away from the where we were hoisting to, but there were people everywhere else. It was fun.
Gosh, what a good
poor Evan. So one of the containers had cases of yogurts.
So wait a minute. So this is later. This is later on in the case after I found out that, he's getting drinks for the umbrellas and stuff, and I'm getting seasick on this. I'm like, oh, that's okay. So yes, I set up one of the baskets, and the basket is the LSC collapsible basket, which has got webbing in it and stuff. And I had taken a bunch of the yogurt containers and filled up the basket, and one of the boxes that busted open. So I'm like, you know what? Screw this. I'm just gonna dump them right on top. Which full well know that as soon as the rotor wash hits that, boom, they're going launching.
Yeah. So I'm hoisting that basket, the one you booby trapped, I would say. And I get over the deck and I notice like these explosions happening on this. And then the deck is like this it's beautiful flooring and all this stuff. And the yogurts are falling out and they're like mortars landing around Eben and everybody else. And they're exploding and leaving these, big splotches on the deck. And everybody's freaking out because they're getting bombed, literally bombed by yogurts. It was quite funny.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And then another, I think it was again a basket that had a bunch of melons in it. Do you remember those?
Oh yeah.
So I put the basket on the deck and with the melons, and one of the crew guys grabbed it and kind of tipped it over, and the melon just spilt everywhere. And I remember commenting, the deck is awash with melons because the melons were falling everywhere. Yeah.
And I hate to laugh at that, but that was so fun. What a great case that was. We had, my goodness.
It was challenging in the fact that, when you do something repetitively over and over, you start to slack off. So, we had to kind of still keep our professionalism, and when you're into the 80th hoist, it's like automatic, but you don't want to do that. Still stuff. Hoisting to your vessel was definitely the more challenging hoist.
Yeah. We had a much smaller area for sure.
So they had a little roll and pitch to it. So, but you guys did a great job. It was.
Oh, you did too. One of the things I that stands out to in my mind with that in particular case is that the second day was raining, and there was a lot of water on my vessel as well because I was drenched, from just the waves. Because we had about a 6 to 7 foot swell that we were riding over, and when you would get a good like 8-9 footer, the water would come onto the deck, so I would just get soaked. Well, my tagline got wet, and it was the first time I had ever noticed it when my tagline was so drenched wet, and we had a little bit of a mist in the air, and I was getting the little electrical shock through the tagline, through the water that's coming. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I can't believe this is happening to me right now. And that is what was happening. So the RotoWash was, putting that static electricity on the cable, and it was literally running right down the water in the rope to my hands. And I'm like, what a good case. Oh, so fun. So,
and we were on CNN. We were like the news.
We did make the news on that one. Yep. Picture of CNN of us out there. Crew rescuing. Helping the cruise ship in distress. So fun. Oh man. Well, that's some good stories, Pat. I appreciate talking about those. So now I'm going to move on a little bit more and I want to talk because you have some great, lessons learned. You have some great training advice, safety advice. What would you tell everybody right now that's either A, getting into it, or B, that's been doing it for a long time, or both?
One thing that comes to mind is I find a lot of people in the helicopter-based hoist rescue business don't understand the hazards of shock loading the cable and dynamic stress you can put on the cable, because people think the cable's rated at 5,800 pounds, and they think, well, I'm hoisting, I can only hoist 600 pounds because that's the limit that I can hoist, so I'm never even overloading the cable. But I think a bigger awareness on how much dynamic load can be put on the cable, and you can actually overload the cable when you have, say, for example, somebody's coming into the cabin and you have a lot of slack cable, they fall, you just introduced a lot more than 250 pounds onto the cable.
Very true.
I think understand, and when I learned that, I was shocked and kind of like taken back that I didn't know that the 20 years in the Coast Guard. It really wasn't emphasized, and I think it should be. And then I run into other people who are kind of the same kind of thing. It's it's strong enough. It's strong enough when used but oftentimes you find yourself in positions like doing vertical rescues. You've got somebody on a cliff, and you got your rescue specialist, whoever he is, attached to the line. If he gets too much, you get slack in the line, and he slips and falls off the cliff. You've just now introduced a ton of load on that cable, and it could be enough to part the cable.
Right.
Not good. So that's one thing that I think is important, is get people to get a good understanding of the cable's limitations and envisioning how situations can exceed the capacity of the cable.
Agreed. It is important. Like, that really up at the aircraft is one of the scariest times. And yeah, so
that, and that kind of brings to the second piece of equipment I like to see everybody use is some sort of fall restraint. Basically it's a self-retracting fall prevention cable or strap.
It's an OSHA approved fall restraint they use on high rises and large skyscrapers when the guys are up there putting bolts and nuts and welding up top. They'll usually run a cable with this fall restraint system, and it's a retractable one, so it's almost like a seatbelt, so you can walk it out and it'll lock if you go too fast. So great piece of equipment, highly recommended to anybody that's doing aircraft stuff, because as soon as you get up, boom, connect them right to it.
Yeah, it adds a huge amount of security, preventing that dynamic load on the cable, but also during that transition when the person is going from the seatbelt to the cable, it prevents them from falling out of the aircraft.
Right.
And when you're bringing a survivor or a rescue specialist up to the cabin and you're using that type of system, and you connect that system to that person, whatever you're calling that system, when you connect that system to the person, you can literally feel the sigh of relief in the flight controls, because now the pilot has, he knows that person can't fall out, can't damage anything, that they are connected via this other piece of equipment to the aircraft. So they can come in, they can disconnect from the hoist hook, they're still connected safe, they're not going to fall out, and then they can move around, get into their position. But I honestly, you can literally feel the sigh of relief from everybody in the cabin when you hear devices connected, and then it's like, oh, it's like the babies are home.
Yeah. They can't fall. They're not going anywhere. They're on a restraint system, fall restraint inside the air, coming inside the aircraft. It's nice. It's good advice, man. Good advice. I am curious, because you did talk about it right when we got started. So you learned something last week in the trees.
Yes. All right. There it was. Darkest storm. Oh,
yes.
Hold on.
There I was, top of the tree.
No. All right. Bear with me. This is going to make sense.
Okay.
I got to paint the picture, though, right?
Paint the picture. I tried.
So I'm taking down a white pine. It's about 150 feet, and it's close to a house. One direction, another direction, there's a propane tank. Another direction, there's the county road. Another direction, there's a bunch of trees. Another direction, there is a shop and garage and that kind of stuff. So there's physically no place to fall 150-foot tree. So the plan is to climb it and take it down in pieces until it's short enough that I can fall the rest of it. So when I climb a tree, I'm wearing the whole tree climbing gear, a harness, spurs, flip line, a couple other ropes and stuff. And then I carry, it's a climbing tree saw. It's a specialized chainsaw made for tree work. It's very short and small and has a top handle. It's not like your back handle chainsaw. Okay. It has a lot of power, and they're very expensive. Did I say they're very expensive?
Yeah, noted.
So, and it's attached to my harness with a retractable tether. It's kind of like got a bungee cord in it. And then it also has I think it's a 150-pound breakaway that if you're cutting the top out or something and the saw hangs up in the tree as it's falling, the saw will break away. Mm-hmm. And it also has, toward the end of the tether, it has a big ring. So it's attached at one end. At the other end has a ring that and it just hangs the saw off my saddle. And then it has a short little piece of strap with a clip that's connected to the saw. Have I done a good job painting that picture?
Yes, I totally understand.
All right, so I'm climbing up, and I use the saw to limb limbs as I get up. And I get up my goal is to get to about 100 feet and then cut the top off and then work my way down. So anyway, I get up about 50, 60 feet, and I'm trimming some limbs with the saw. And I go to put my saw back. So I put that big ring onto its hook. Mm-hmm. And I do that, and I notice, like, wow, I don't feel the weight of the saw anymore. And I looked down and the saw is now on the ground. So it fell that far.
Oof.
And the reason it fell is because of the clip that I had on there. Dynamic rollout. You know what that is, huh?
Oh, no kidding. Okay. Yep. I do know what that is.
So
And if
somehow,
anybody, real quick, if anybody doesn't know what dynamic rollout is, you can take two non-locking carabiners and you can connect them together and basically roll one onto the gate of the other and pop it off. And I will be happy to demonstrate this and put it on my Instagram page for everybody to see. Dynamic rollout. It is preventable. Go ahead.
it is preventable, and people have died due to dynamic rollout. It's no joke, and it's always got to be in your mind. So anyway, dynamic rollout, my chainsaw is now way down there. So I finished the tree with my big chainsaw, which kicked my butt because it's not easy to run a big chainsaw inches from your face and the weight of it. Anyway, I finished the tree with my big chainsaw, go down there. I had to buy a bunch of parts, fix my saw. But the lesson learned is I've been using that clip I've been doing this, on and off for 15 years. And I've been using that clip for 12 so many years. And I use the clip because sometimes when I get down, I like to disconnect that lanyard and use the saw to limb the tree because it's handy, because it's super handy.
Okay.
And leave the lanyard attached is just kind of in the way. But what I learned, the lesson I learned out of there is just because it's been working for so long doesn't make it right. And it really caused me to stop and look at like some of the other stuff that I do in that tree work and things like that. And like, well, just because it's been working does not make it the right thing. It should never have had a clip on there. It should have had something that prevented it from dynamic rollout or whatever. And you get suckered into, well, it worked. It's always worked the years before. Yeah, that may be true, but it doesn't necessarily make it right. So my lesson there was like to kind of step back, look at my gear, my rigging, my procedures, and just make sure everything I'm doing was right.
Man, that's awesome. And I'm going to circle into the helicopter world. And that is what like everybody should be thinking. One of the things that when we go into training, we start talking CRM, and when you talk specifically about the DuPont's Dirty Dozen, the very number 12 is known as the norms. And it's like, it drives me mental. Like this is one of the ones that just really chaps me, because you hear that people say this, well, this is the way we've always done it. No, it's not. This is not the way we did it in 1940. So stop saying that. Things have changed and things have progressed and people have learned, and you've learned from mistakes. Take a look at what you're doing. Is it the safest way? Is there a better way to do it? Is there new gear and equipment that's out there that you can use? Are there newer procedures? Are there better procedures? Man, good on you, Pat. And thanks for bringing that to us, man. I'm all about it.
Right on. And it's a challenge to do that. I think we're just mentally, the way we're wired, it's hard to step outside of yourself and look at what you're doing. But to do that, you got to have some, since I'm in the training I think it's training from a bunch of different sources and reputable sources is super important, and getting somebody to help you look at that, just stick on dynamic rollout. Like once you understand what dynamic rollout is, you should take that knowledge and apply it to everything that of course, I'm not talking about everything, but I'm not talking about washing the dishes,
right?
Everything related to your serious business of SAR or rescue or whatever it is,
yeah.
And apply that knowledge, and I used to have this rule where there were no locking carabiners ever on the aircraft, or excuse me, non-locking carabiners.
Yeah, non-locking carabiners. Yeah.
There's no non-locking carabiners, because if there's one, somehow it's going to make its way into a life support system. And, So let's just make a rule that you can't even have them on your helmet bags to clip, to secure your helmet bag.
Right. And you know what? That falls into your second case. When you're talking about using chocks to put down on the boat. You get on that case and you've exhausted everything in the helicopter, and now you have one carabiner left. It's the one on your helmet bag, and it's the only non-locking carabiner there.
Right. Exactly.
Like, it happens, and people look at that and be like, "No, that'll never happen." Yes, it will. Just give it time.
It will. Give it time. It took me 15 years for that saw to fall off my harness, but it did. Fortunately, nobody was underneath there at the time, because that sucker hitting you, that would have done some damage.
Yeah. You almost had to buy a new saw, which is expensive.
Did I tell you they're expensive?
You might have mentioned that.
The parts were expensive just to fix it, but I got lucky on that.
Yeah.
Lucky on that. Super lucky.
Well, great advice, Pat. Great advice. Thank you for sharing that, for sure. So anyway. Well, Mr. Pat Barber, I do not want to take any more of your time. I cannot thank you enough for coming on and joining me here at the Real ResQ podcast. Dude, it is awesome to see you. It's awesome to hang out. And I really do look forward to the next time that you and I get to spend some time together, because it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
So
thank you very much. It's been awesome.
Good. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of here. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Real ResQ podcast. Please take a minute and, like my daughters like to tell me, like and subscribe. Oh yeah. I'm pulling chocks and taking off. But before I go, if anyone out there has a rescue story that they would be willing to share, I would be humbled and honored to have you as a guest. Or if you have any questions about any of the rescues or anything else that we talk about here on this podcast, send me an email. therealresq@gmail.com. That's therealresq@gmail.com. You can also check us out on our Facebook and Instagram page at The Real ResQ. That's at therealresq. I also want to give a special thank you to all of you staying on the watch today. Always remember that when that SAR alarm goes off, those in distress are praying for a miracle. They are going to get you. Until next time, fly safe and swim hard.